Welcome back to the Power to Build Show, the podcast where we explore the trends, technologies, and people shaping the future of home building. I'm Marco.
And I'm Brian. Today, we're joined by an industry veteran and fellow podcaster who brings a unique blend of real estate grit, tech savvy, and entrepreneurial insight. Clay Lehman is the founder of Lehman Strategies Partners, a licensed CPA and Florida real estate broker, and host of Real Estate All Day with Clay. He spent over 16 years in the trenches, from managing foreclosed properties during the 2008 housing crisis to helping real estate professionals scale smarter with AI.
And if you've ever tuned into Real Estate All Day with Clay, you know he's all about fast, actionable strategies that help agents and teams stay sharp without burning out. We're excited to dive into Clay's journey, his insights on today's market, and how sales teams can stay resilient and innovative in uncertain times. Clay, welcome to the show. So let's start at the beginning, Clay. How did you get into real estate, and what was it like working at Pulte Homes during the 2005 to 2008 housing crisis?
Yeah, so that's what was my initiation into real estate. I was working I came out of accounting. My degree is accounting. My licensure, I'm a licensed CPA. I still am. Don't ask me anything about taxes.
Yeah.
But to get back to the point, I went to work at Pulte to be the controller, so managing the accounting function for the Ocala division. It was really interesting. So I started in August of 2005, and the housing boom was still in full swing. One of the things that sticks out to me about the transition from 2005 to 2008 was when I got there in 2005, the market was super red hot. So we didn't pay commissions, or if we did, it was really like, we just didn't. I think the company line was, what do we need to pay commissions for? We have buyers coming out of our ears.
Right.
I can tell you by the time I left in 2008, they were paying commissions. It was, they were desperate for buyers. So for me, being relatively new into real estate, it was sort of interesting just to see how, the market leverage moves from buyer to seller, and the way that impacts the behavior of both parties. So like in our case, as a seller of homes, as inventory grew, we had to get more competitive. So that was a real eye-opening experience. But that's what brought me into real estate, was going to work at Pulte Homes. The other thing, not to belabor things, the other thing I loved about that job, I'm sort of scatterbrained a little bit. I enjoy knowing a little bit about a lot of different things. And that job really fed that, because as the controller at a production builder, I had to interact with the land guys when they were going out to buy and clear land, the construction people when they're pricing the houses, the salespeople to come up with, sales strategies and how those are impacting our numbers. So it was a great introduction to just a broad range of disciplines within real estate.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I really appreciate that, Clay. So I guess, we're kind of seeing a little bit of that, I guess, at this point. So as we consider the current climate of uncertainty, could you discuss some of the parallels or distinctions that you observe between, what you experienced earlier in the period versus, now, current market conditions?
Absolutely. So, and it's hard not to draw parallels between the two, but there are some distinct differences.
Right.
I'm obviously, like everyone else in real estate, I'm trying to handicap like what the next few years are going to look like. And it's challenging. So the similarities are, there's been a big run up of inventory. We went from, a few years ago, we had in my area, and I'm in Central Florida, we had 1 month inventory forever, and so that meant that there was, you put a property on the market, it sold immediately, bidding wars, sight unseen, the whole deal. In the time since, we now have a much higher level of inventory, and there's, sellers are having to compete again for buyers. But I think it's important to draw a distinction here, and that is that even though inventory is tremendously higher than it was, it's nowhere near what inventory was in 2008. In 2008, we had almost 30 months of inventory, meaning if we didn't add another house to the market, it would take close to 3 years to sell through what we had available. Currently in Central Florida, we're at about 6 or 6.5 months inventory. So we're significantly below that number.
Okay.
The other big distinction I see, so in 2005 to 2008, we would see homes change hands a number of times before anyone even occupied them. We don't see that as much as we used to. There aren't as many vacant houses out there. So I think there are some really strong parallels between 2008 and where we are today, but I do think we aren't looking at the same level of sort of catastrophic correction. Back of the napkin is that, there's just no denying that our inventory is increasing.
Right.
So prices will have to come down. But I don't think it'll be so precipitous. The drop won't be, it'll just be like a gradual sort of, I think it's natural in the housing market, right? That you want, I always think of it like a pipe with steam in it. If you
Right.
never release the pressure a little bit, it blows up. And that's what happened in 2008. And I think what we're looking at right now is sort of a gradual release of some pressure in the market. Prices will come down a little bit. It looks like interest rates might start to come down, which will then spur demand. And so hopefully the two will kind of meet, and then it'll start heading back up. So I think there's definitely parallels, but I don't think we need to be, in the Chicken Little sky is falling,
Yeah,
mode
yeah.
quite yet.
No, that's a great analogy, Clay. And I guess because just kind of overlapping on that, since you're in Central Florida,
Yeah.
which I guess, has been pretty hit hard recently. Like, what are you seeing, specific things on the ground there? Like, you had mentioned, more competition as far as, selling a home. Like, what else are you seeing out there?
Yeah, we're seeing that the sellers are having to increase their incentives, lower
Hmm.
prices, offer potentially higher commission, although we haven't seen that as much. I mean, what's interesting is that the fundamentals have been pointing to, reduction in prices for probably 8 or 10 months,
Right.
but our prices have stayed steady and kind of crept up just a tiny bit and just recently started to kind of take that dip. So, I mean, I think demand has kept up to a point. Now it's starting to kind of take that dip. But the biggest thing we're seeing is just the builders are, slowing down on new lot purchases. Lot prices haven't gotten the message yet. I mean, I am
Yeah.
still a little bit active in trying to build houses, and but the prices are still high. But you're starting to see every piece of the puzzle kind of slowing a little bit. Lot acquisition slowing a little bit. Permits for starts are coming down a little bit, so eventually that'll end up with lower production. We're still having an influx of people moving to the area, but just between all the apartment buildings that have been finished, rental inventories higher. I think this is totally n- non-scientific. Okay, I don't have the numbers for this. This is just what I feel. I feel like the Airbnb enthusiasm has cooled, and some
Yeah.
Airbnbs are converting to longer term rentals. And I just think overall the options for housing inventory are, pretty plentiful, but we still have people coming in. So I think things just have to, we have to get a little less enthusiastic with building, take that inventory down a little bit, and I think things will kind of even out. But that's what I'm seeing.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Clay. And, we're always talking about ways to avoid burnout, given, we're a software company and building smarter systems. For our audience of home builders and specifically sales teams, what does strategic resilience look like in a down market?
Man, that is such a great question because it can be really deflating to come to work every day. And especially if you're coming out of that enthusiastic, work is so fun because everybody's buying houses. And
Yeah.
now it's like we're really having to put in the work. And just to be clear, I'm not saying you're not working when things are busy. It's just more fun work, right? But now the transition is, okay, what do I do to refocus my energies to where they're going to be most effective? And I think the biggest thing is to stop focusing on your lag measures and focus much more on your lead measures. So in the case of home builders, your lag measure is going to be, revenue or homes sold, things placed under contract. Those are kind of your lag measures, and you have some control, but really what you control are the lead measures of making the phone calls, basically going back to your fundamentals that you have to execute on to, kind of make up for the lack of enthusiasm in the marketplace for your product. So,
Right.
you have to really do a deep dive on who's your ideal customer, How do I reach them? The biggest thing you want to know about your ideal customer is what are their pain points? What are the problems they're facing? Depending on the product of home you're building, people are buying a home, but their problem isn't, I don't have a home. Their problem is probably something like, I'm new to the area and I need to know more about it. And I need to know where the best place for my specific situation is. That's the question you want to answer. Or perhaps you're building larger homes and you're having people that my parents are, health concerns are requiring that they move back in with me. So now I
Yep.
need a bigger home. That's a totally different concern than, like, let's say I have a growing family. And so you really want to hone in on who is my ideal client, what problems are they having, and then I need to answer those questions either with my, putting content on social media or the brochures that I'm producing, or, everything needs to be focused on what does my client need. So the kind of shorter answer is get away from looking at how many contracts did I sign today, and that being a lag measure. Go to your lead measure of how many phone calls did I make today? How many hands did I shake today? And then also focusing on, is my messaging aligned with my ideal customer's biggest problems?
Huh.
That's
That's
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's going to help, a lot of home builders. But you also talk a lot about helping agents and teams scale without burnout.
Yes.
It's a huge part of your brand. What does that look like in practice for a home sales team?
Okay. Well, I just want everybody to uh, fight the urge to yawn when I say the next thing that comes out of my mouth. Okay. But what it looks like is thoroughly documenting your processes. And it's not the sexiest topic in the world. And there isn't an, okay, so there's an easier button, but there's not an easy button. But it's
Mhm.
so much easier today than it's ever been to document your process. So I'm going to start with why, right? Simon Sinek, start with why. The why is the single thing that keeps you trapped in your business is the lack of process, because that prevents you from being able to optimize, delegate, automate. You can't do any of that if you don't know what you're doing. So you got to start with documenting your processes. And what makes it easier than ever is using tools like Loom. That's my favorite. You could also, if you have a Zoom account, you can do it with Zoom, but Loom is specifically set up to help you. You can record meetings, but you can also record yourself walking through a process. One of my favorite books is Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time. And one of the frameworks he shares is what he calls the camcorder method. And he jokes that dates him because when he started this process, it was literally using a camcorder. But the idea behind the camcorder method is you make a recording of yourself doing a process. The screen, but you're speaking through the process as if you were training someone. Then you take the transcript of that training session, and this is the easier button. Loom will give you a really nice transcript of any of the meetings that you record with it, including meetings with yourself where you're just recording processes. Take that into an AI tool and instruct the AI tool to convert that into an SOP. What's great is it'll take what you did and it'll create, a step-by-step of what you did. But then you can ask it to cross-reference that against industry best practices and make suggestions as to how
Oh,
you
wow.
can improve that SOP. So that's like that. There's no excuse. So like the process, this is just the quick and dirty 3 or 4 step process that I would suggest you go through. I would start by asking AI. And for this step, I like to use Perplexity, but I would ask Perplexity, create for me the table of contents of the ultimate process manual for home builders, or, for whatever you do. Ask it to give you the table of contents. And the reason that, for me, that sets, here's everything I need to document. And then I would go process by process, and either myself or whoever is the process owner, have them use Loom to record themselves doing it, make an SOP. Then take all of that, okay, once you, and do it as you're going. But there's this amazing tool called Google Notebook LM. And
Mhm.
it's basically like you can train your own large language model. That's the kind of, if you're building your own AI. It's only trained on your data. It doesn't use your data to train itself, so it's, secure. Now, I don't know about HIPAA, but we're home
Yeah.
builders, so but it's secure. And you can load your processes in there. And the advantage of putting them into Notebook is then you chat with it. So like, for example, in my title company, we had a process manual and we have a process for making your earnest money deposit. But if someone were searching for that process and they said EMD instead of earnest money deposit, or if they misspelled earnest, or any number of human errors, it would have no idea how to tell them what it was asking. By using Google Notebook LM, someone can use natural language to ask a question. And then let's say that you had 3 or 4 different documents where that answer lived. If they're all in Google Notebook, it'll pull that out and give you a snippet of exactly what you're looking for. So all of our process manuals live in Google Notebook LM for that reason.
That's awesome. No, Clay, those are some great insights. And obviously AI is here.
Yeah.
Marco and I are in sales ourselves. So we're slowly trying to adapt to that and trying to utilize that more and more in our day to day. But when it comes to selling, Clay, like obviously there's some factors that you can't control, but what are some things that sales teams can control? Like, are there finishings, messagings, or any product tweaks that can make a difference here?
Yeah, no, I think the biggest thing, and not to, be repetitive, but I do feel like it's
Right.
at the core of what people need to do is understand who their ideal client is. A lot
For
of
sure.
times we've developed our marketing, and especially, I think of, like, for me, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I think I can do everything. I can do
Hmm.
everything. I can do anything and everything. So a lot of times we apply that to marketing, and what ends up happening is you see something cool someone else is doing, you say, "Oh, I need to do that," and then I need to do this, and so you have Frankenstein's monster of marketing where you've pieced together all these things, but they're not necessarily strategic. And one of the key pieces we miss is, who is my ideal customer? And once you've sort of, and at a granular level, like, not like, well, I service first time home buyers. I mean, you need to really dig into who your ideal client is. What are their demographics? What are their psychographics? Their psychographics being what motivates them, but most importantly, what are their pain points and their problems? Then what you have to look at is my marketing designed to bring them along on their journey? So let's say someone called you and said, "Hey, I need to get to where you are. Can you give me directions?" Well, the first thing you need to know is, where are they? And that's what you need to know about your client, because marketing is nothing other than trying to move someone from where they are to where you want them to be. But to move them, you need to know where they're starting, and then you need to know the path that they're going to take to get from where they are to where you want them. And
Right.
so first, that starts with knowing who they are. That's the where they are. This is where they start, and then understanding their journey. And so again, this is something that AI can help you with. Once you've identified kind of the general idea of who your ideal client is, you can ask an AI tool, say, "This is who I'm trying to serve. This is the geography where I live. Tell me give me their demographics and psychographics." And I generally do that I ask it in Gemini's deep research mode, because it'll give you like a 19, 20, 30-page report. I don't read it. I use that to then I use that to then feed into either Chat or Claude to say, "Okay, take this document and map out my customer's journey." And I tell it specifically through the sales funnel, and then help me craft content that will reach the client at each stage of the funnel. Because
Wow.
the other mistake we make is we don't match our calls to action with where the person is in the funnel. And it's similar to, like, if you're, when you're dating, and on the first call you have with someone, you say, "Hey, do you want to get married?" That's
Yeah.
probably not the right time to ask that question. Well, just like your first interaction with a potential buyer isn't probably the time to be like, "Sign this contract or we'll never speak again." It's like, you got to
Yeah.
warm them up. And so the biggest thing that people can do to improve their sales is just to look at, who is my ideal customer? What is their journey? And then cross reference, look at your marketing and say, does this move someone from here to here? You want your
Hmm.
social media marketing to be more focused on awareness type stuff, like, making sure that they know you exist and kind of have an idea of what you do, and you're answering. Every piece of content needs to have value for the consumer. It needs to have a goal of some kind. You need to understand, what is the next step I'm trying to get them to take. And then it needs to have a call to action that tells them to take that step. So, like, for my clients, a lot of whom are real estate agents, I want their social media content to be valuable and to encourage someone to check out their profile. And then on their profile, they need to have, like a free lead magnet type call to action that says, "Hey, download my free guide for investors," or whatever. And then every step of the way, we want to make sure that we have value for the consumer, a goal for the content, and then a call to action to move someone to the next step in the process.
It's amazing.
Gotcha. Well, that's awesome. And we have a lot of customers, and um, some of them are national builders, and they have different divisions. And when you spoke about finding a niche and finding a specific customer, how would you respond to some of our home builders who have kind of branched out and developed different communities for different buyers? Is there any kind of loss in their message to homeowners, or is there a way to explain that to them as they're, marketing towards them?
No, I mean, I think they can. I don't think that there's a loss. The loss would be if they have one marketing message for every area and for every product type. So meaning like, let's say they build for 3 or 4 different life stages, but every single message is just sort of an amalgamation of what would appeal to everyone. Because like the rule of thumb in marketing is if you're trying to appeal to everyone, you're appealing to no one. So what I would encourage them to do is to like have their marketing setup match their buyer type or their area. So like if I were a national home builder and I'm building, like, let's say here in Central Florida where inventory is high and I'm having to work a lot harder to get buyers versus maybe in the Midwest, or I don't even really know where the markets, but I understand that there are some markets that are still super hot. Well, I would want to make sure that my messaging was appropriate for those different areas, both where they are in terms of the sales cycle leverage to the buyer versus leverage to the seller, but also you probably have a very different buyer type in that, the Midwest versus Central Florida. So it's just a simple matter of, and I don't necessarily I would advocate striking a balance, right? Because let's say you're in 52 different markets. You don't want 52 different marketing messages, but I would bet you could boil it down to 3 or 4 that would be different enough and apply enough in all of those different markets. That would be the biggest thing, would be to just segment your marketing so that you're not sending the same message to everyone, but obviously you have to keep it manageable. So try to find those content pillars or those messages that sort of work across a handful of the different markets that you're in.
Gotcha. And as you've, already mentioned, you're a big advocate for using AI in real estate. You've mentioned a couple tools like Loom, Google. We use Microsoft's Copilot.
Sure.
How else could home sales teams use AI to their advantage? Something you haven't mentioned yet, maybe even a couple tools that you haven't mentioned already that you can share with some of our home builders that would really help, drive.
Yeah, no, of course. I appreciate the question. I'm a big advocate for Google's Gemini product for a number of reasons. And I'm going to answer the question because it's got a lot of aspects, which is one of the reasons I like it so much. What I mean by that is different skills and capabilities. So your Gemini product is the competitor to Chat, and it works very well, similar to Chat, etc. The other thing that I use it for extensively, as I previously mentioned, is deep research. So if I were a
Right.
home builder, particularly if I'm opening a new neighborhood or definitely a new market, I would go into Gemini's deep research and I would ask it for, a research document on the demographics of the area. What's the competitive landscape? I don't use it, like, let's say I had a listing. I'm not going to use that to find comps because at that super duper duper granular level, it doesn't perform as well. But from a higher level, like you would hire a marketing firm to do a huge research study for you, that's what you're getting. So I would use that. And then I would go into Google Notebook LM and I would load the research documents. And then Google Notebook LM has a discover function where you can tell it what topic you're researching it, tell it to go out and discover other sources for that information, bring all of that into one notebook, and then you can start asking it questions, like questions you might normally ask someone about, okay, this is the product we're building. How do I best appeal to the people there? What size home is going to be the best fit for just the different kind of like sort of research ideas that you might have. I would leverage Google and Gemini and deep research for that. The other things, the other tools that I haven't mentioned that I use extensively are, let's see, obviously I'm in Chat a ton, but I'm not in it nearly as much as I used to be. I'm in Gemini a ton. I use Claude a lot. Claude is a better writing partner. Like if you write long form content, or it tends to perform better. I use a tool called Midjourney for images. So, if you need images, of happy homeowners or whatever, you can get all kinds of great images out of there. I use Gamma a boatload. So Gamma is this incredible app, and the URL is gamma.app. It's a presentation builder, but it goes so far beyond that. So you can make like if you're doing a PowerPoint, or like yesterday I did a workshop, and so I created my presentation out of Gamma. But the thing I use it for a lot, and I help my clients with, is making extremely attractive like ebooks and white papers. So what you can do in Gamma is go in either with just one line, meaning you could go in and tell it, I need a white paper for buyers in the Ocala area interested in new construction. And it'll create this beautiful, informative ebook. Or you can take your outline and say, okay, I created this outline. I want you to make a book, ebook out of it. And it'll make it inserts imagery, it inserts like, what do you call it? Infographic type stuff.
Right.
It's amazing. I use that extensively, and that's a great tool that anybody in sales could use, because like I said, it creates incredibly professional looking presentations, but then also ebooks. So the big kind of new buzzword in AI is agentic AI. And you guys may be well aware, in your listeners, but I'm going to go ahead and just sort of touch on the difference. So with like a ChatGPT or Gemini, you're going to give it a query, and then it'll execute on that query. So you might say, tell me more about home buyers in this area, and it would tell you more about it. And then you might say, well, help me develop, 10 pieces of content, and then it would do that. The difference is with agentic AI, you could say, I want you to help me build a marketing system to draw in home buyers in Central Florida. And that's it. Hit enter, and it's going to do all of the research. It's going to do it's going to look at everything you need to create to make that marketing plan. And it's going to present you with a fully completed marketing plan with social media suggestions. You can design websites. It'll build you websites that you can deploy straight out of Manus. Agentic AI is incredibly powerful, which
Right.
then reminds me of the next thing that I have been using extensively. And that is, Perplexity just released its own browser. It's called the Comet browser. And I have always been a big Google user, and always Chrome. I do not use Chrome anymore. Now, Comet's built on Chrome, but it has an assistant mode where you can tell it, like, for example, there's all kinds of cool stuff it can do. The other day, I was like, I need a list of all the blogs I've written with a link and a description of the blogs. I could have done it. It would have probably taken me an hour and a half or 2 hours to go through and do it. I told
Hmm.
the assistant to do it, and it went through, and not only did it like grab the information it could see on the screen, but it went into each blog. Like, it clicked the button without me touching anything. It clicked the button, pulled up the blog, summarized the blog, moved to the next one, moved to the next page of blogs. It's doing all that. I love it. I'll have it. Oh, you can't see it, but I have 3 screens. I'll be working on one screen, and on this side, I'll have either Manus or Comet doing work, and I'm like watching it work. It's invigorating to sit here and be
Yeah.
like, all right, I'm working here, and my AI tool is executing stuff over there. So, I mean, I
That's
would say
awesome.
that's kind of the quick and dirty AI stack.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you almost have assistants working for you in the background
Exactly.
while you're doing other things. Clay, we're gonna definitely have to sit down with you at another time, because you seem to have a lot of knowledge with this. And again,
No, I appreciate it.
it's one of those areas that truthfully, like Marco and I talk about, and we want to sort of adopt that, try to leverage it a little bit more, right? So um why don't we shift gears a little bit,
Sure.
Clay, talk about some financing strategies. One thing we've seen builders lean into lately is what's called mortgage rate buy downs. I'm sure you
Yeah.
know what that is. From your perspective, is buy down a good idea in today's market? What are your
Yeah,
thoughts
I
there?
think so. I mean, it goes back to, there's just so much competition. You've really got to try and find what works. But I think the biggest pain point for buyers is and I say it tongue in cheek, higher interest rates, because, when I
Hmm.
bought my first house, I paid 9% interest. So 6 is still pretty attractive.
Yeah.
But for those buyers that still have 4 and 5% in their head, the buy down can be an extremely attractive thing. And most consumers don't understand like how that works, or that it's even an option. So if they're looking at 2 homes next to each other, and one's a little bit less expensive, say $5,000 less expensive, like on the sticker price or the sales price, like it's a car, on the purchase price, but the one that's a little more expensive has a rate buy down that's going to save them, 50, 175,000, whatever, tens of thousands of dollars over the course of the time they own the home. Buyers are savvy enough to understand that difference. And I'll be honest with you, I've always been a huge advocate of, like, get your price lower, versus like just because like simple like search engine stuff, if they are searching for houses under 250 and you're at
Mm-hmm.
255 with 7,500 in closing cost assistance, they're still not going to see it. But with rate
Yeah.
buy downs, I do feel like people are savvy enough to be out there looking, and especially if they're looking for new construction, they're probably zeroed in on, the communities that are offering what incentives, and they're comparing them. And I'd probably, if that were my sales approach, I'd probably have some marketing pieces that or not marketing, but like content pieces that are centered around comparing the different offers. Like you may even build a little calculator that they can jump on your website and say, okay, this house is priced at X, but the rate's going to be Y, and the down payment. That's the kind of thing that home buyers can sometimes feel like it's a big shell game,
Right.
and they have problems understanding it. So that'd be a great sort of lead magnet. But the most important thing is, don't make it promotional. It's gotta legitimately compare things. It can't always end with saying you should buy Clay's house. It
Yeah.
has to say it's a better deal to go buy Jim's house instead of Clay's house, or you'll lose credibility with your audience.
No, for sure. And at times it's not just about affordability, right? It's also about
There's a lot of
confidence.
factors.
Exactly. So that buyers feel a little bit more secure as far as,
Yep.
their payments go and such. So, no, really appreciate that. I guess some alternatives, Clay, like what else can builders or, sales teams offer to help buyers feel good about, moving forward, making that big purchase?
Well, I mean, I think having a really strong warranty program, and that one of the things that's going on is that you're competing against higher existing home inventory. One of your competitive advantages is that it's a brand new home. But
Mm-hmm.
if you've ever either built a home or bought a new construction home, you know that that doesn't mean it's problem free. You need to
Right.
make sure that your warranty is strong and that you act on the warranty, so you don't end up with a bunch of one-star reviews of people saying that, they sold me this house and they don't fix anything or whatever. So you want to make sure that you have a really strong warranty offering and
Yep.
that you execute on it. I mean, I think that's a big thing, because that's really your big competitive advantage against existing homes, is that, they're not gonna have to worry about expenses. I think the other thing would be to inspect, like, this is going into that ideal client, but perhaps you think you serve one ideal client, but maybe there are some adjacent client types, or even like things you've never thought of. And that's something I might go into AI and describe what I'm selling and ask who else might be interested in this product that I'm not currently marketing to try and just broaden your reach to see who else is out there that you might be able to sell to.
Awesome. Yeah. And Clay, as we wrap up, a lot of focus has shifted into the future of 2020 at the end of Q4 of 2025, how
Sure.
2026 will look, and even beyond. What's your outlook for home building and the real estate market?
Yeah, I think, and again, I'm really my kind of area, my paradigm I'm coming from, if you will, is here in Central Florida. So I think, we have to slow down on home building for a little bit to let the demand catch up with the inventory. And I
Yeah.
think that's already starting to happen. So I think we'll see lower starts we've already seen kind of that lower start. So, it's like it follows, right? We had lower starts, so we'll
Right.
have lower completions. And then as inventory starts to catch up, which I think hopefully in the latter part of 2026, if we continue to see prices come down just a hair, I really don't think the bottom is going to fall out, maybe 5% or something of that nature. But we see prices come down a hair, and then we see interest rates kind of continue coming down a little bit. And that's so touch and go right now. Like I watch it every day, and it's like, one day you'll see that, okay, it looks like the Fed's going to have the ammunition they need to lower rates. And then the next day it's
Right.
like, oh, consumer consumption is still really high. So who
Yeah.
knows? But
Yeah.
I do believe that we'll start to see interest rates come down a little bit. And I think those two factors together will help us sort of reach bottom in the middle of 2026. And again, I don't think it's like catastrophic bottom. I just think we'll see prices come down a little bit, demand start to creep back up, both because prices are coming down and interest rates are coming down, which
Mm-hmm.
the two combined means that we have better affordability. And then I think we'll start to see things sort of level off and maybe tick back up. My timing could be off. Maybe that's early 2027. But so for home building, I just think that means we could cool it for a little bit and just sort of take inventory down a notch. Then I think that relieves that steam in the pipe, lets things not blow up, and then maybe resume our enthusiasm maybe closer to 2027.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's about being proactive and not just reacting to the market, but
Exactly.
for the next wave of opportunity.
And that's what I've always loved about real estate. It's if you're paying attention and you're flexible, you can sort of keep yourself out of trouble and, and even maybe even be slightly successful. But it's all about paying attention and then having some flexibility. If you're not paying attention, you won't know when the market changes. And if you're too rigid in what you do, you won't be able to move. But real estate's so broad. There's so many different things you can be doing. That's always what I try to advocate for, is pay attention and be flexible.
Awesome. And Clay, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for, your journey and the insights you've shared and all the tools as well.
Yeah.
Please, Brian, go ahead.
I was just gonna say again, I think, just listening to you talk about the whole AI topic, even in this small or little stint, I learned so much, all the different tools that I didn't even know exist. All I know of is ChatGPT, and that's the only one that I've used. That's been fantastic. So before we wrap up, Clay, any final thoughts, builders and sales teams in general to kind of stay resilient and forward thinking in today's market?
Yes, I do want to touch on one thing that you were just
of course.
saying.
Go ahead.
And it may sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth when I say this, but I advocate for keeping your tech stack as thin as possible. I know I just mentioned like 5 or 6 different things. That's one of the reasons I'm a big advocate for Gemini, but chat is right in there too. They are the broadest of the tools. So if you're only going to have one, or if you only have time to dive into one, pick one of those and just dive into it before you start looking at all of the shiny objects. Because every day there's a new shiny object to look at. Optimize what you have first. In terms of staying resilient, I think it's just having a broader perspective than right now or the last year or even the last decade. Real estate is cyclical. It's as true as taxes, death, gravity. It's a law of the universe that real estate goes through cycles. We have been on an upward trend for, 12, 13, 14, 15 years. There's going to be a cycle, but you shouldn't, you should keep that perspective. Know that you just have to kind of ride out these more challenging times. And then be ready and position yourself for when the next uptick comes. And honestly, right now, it doesn't even feel, having lived through 2008 through 2013 or 14, this doesn't feel like that. There are some similarities. I totally would give that. There are definitely some similarities, but it's not that bad. And I would just say, to stay resilient, focus beyond just what's happening right now. Look longer term, set your long-term vision, and then execute on the fundamentals in the short term. And that'll kind of get you where you want to be.
Love that. And Clay, where can our listeners find you if they want to learn more or, connect with you?
Yeah, definitely. My website's real easy. It's www.imclaylehman.com. I'm also very active on Facebook, which you can find me just as Clay Lehman, Lehman. And my final little plug there is I have a free Facebook group for what I call AI curious real estate professionals. It's called, if you just type in Unstuck AI, I'll come up. And that's a great place to come in, because I do a live training every Thursday. And then we do all kinds of content in there on, new AI tools or new applications or just thought leadership type stuff. Like I'll put in, I finished a book yesterday and I like to put in a little blurb about that. Just all kinds of different stuff in there that I think people would enjoy.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Clay. And thank you to our listeners. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and stay tuned for more episodes of the Power to Build show.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys.